Are you happy in your business? Now, I have had my share of emotional ups and downs in my 20 years of being a solo entrepreneur coach. And the patterns I've seen in myself and in my clients is that those downs are usually when I was personally feeling unfulfilled. Sometimes it was because a launch that flopped, and sometimes it was just life and had nothing to do with business. But those ups, oh boy, those are the times when I was feeling my most authentic and completely aligned to my purpose, or when I just felt like I was rocking that work-life balance. I would be thinking I could do this all day long and never feel tired. One of my loves is sharing what works for me and what has been working for my clients to achieve this very feeling, full of passion, happiness, peace, and freedom. So I decided to create a private podcast for coaches. Maybe you just want to develop better communication skills that boosts engagement, leads to better results, and makes you feel like you're actually making a difference in the lives of the people you serve. Then you're invited too. We talk about this and more in the UBU private podcast for coaches. Whether you're a mentor, a parent, or run a client-focused business, coaching skills benefit everyone and anyone who wants to communicate in a way that builds relationships. Fall in love with your life and business again. Click the link in the show notes for your invitation to join us right now. Then come back and enjoy this episode. Hey, difference maker. Have you ever wondered what an Enneagram typing session is like? Well, today I'm talking with Sue Bidstrup, life coach and founder of the Great Big Yes and the Christian coaching membership Team Yes. When Sue and I first met a little over a year ago, I think, it was whenever I was a guest on her podcast, The Great Big Yes. Sue thought she was a type 3, but after our chat for this episode, I think I got her thinking outside of the box of what our conscious brains tend to do. Now, this is an official typing session since I was not in coaching mode. We were just chit-chatting, but it will definitely give you a sneak peek of what to expect as far as the kind of clarity and confidence that you get when you start understanding yourself better. You know, you can go out there and scour the interwebs for Enneagram information for days, weeks, months, or in my own case, my own mistyping story, it took me years. Or you can spend an hour with a qualified coach. Have a listen in on our conversation and tell me if you can pinpoint when all of the light bulbs start turning on for Sue. It's time to stop comparing yourself to others and plug in to what is uniquely you. Welcome to Unbox Your Personality, the podcast for coaches, parents, and mentors like you who understand that your happiness makes you more effective at what you do, bringing out the best in others. I'm Jen Higgins, personality strategist and Enneagram fluff remover. Get laser focused on who you are and who you aren't, so you're free to make the impact you were born to make. And have fun doing it. Your personality is your business. So let's get down to business. Hey, Sue Bidstrup, how are you doing?
Hi, Jen. I'm great. How are you?
Let the listeners know where you're coming from right now.
So I am in Austin, Texas, and it is hot. And I'm a coach for women. I work with Christian women who are launching or growing a business, and a lot of them really struggle with marketing and sales. Like they feel cheesy or sleazy, kind of getting the word out about their business. So I help them get really comfortable with that. And we do it from a faith-based perspective. So it's all about like finding out who you are. They're afraid because they're trying to be someone else. They're trying to figure out what's this thing that this other girl did to be successful. So I can do that thing and be successful. And that's a lie. When you know who you are, you can embrace that and own that, and then you're in your power. But when you pretend you're someone else, it's always going to fall flat. What I learned through my relationship with God is that He made me who I am, and I have an original design. He put giftings in me, and He equipped me for things that only I can do on this earth, right? And so there's a purpose for all the ways He made me. So there's no shame in how he made me. There's no trying to change how he made me. Like, I know my power is when I'm more me.
Mm-hmm.
And so when people tell me, and this is why I think I relate to a 7 sometimes, is my life, people have told me I'm too loud, or I'm too much, or I have too much energy, or slow down your cadence, or whatever it is. And what I've realized is it's actually that thing that somebody told me to tamper down, that when I embrace it, I'm more successful. God will bring the people to you that are supposed to work with you. But if you're putting something out that's like fake and weird and awkward, and you're imitating somebody, or you're striving for something that isn't you, those people that are going to come to you are going to be the wrong people. And you're not going to want to work with them, and you're not going to feel energized by that work, and you're going to be frustrated, and you're always going to be striving in your marketing. So marketing really is building relationships, and you can't build relationships until you are fully yourself. And that's why I love what you do, because it's all about like embracing our original design and really going out in the world and being more ourselves. And that leads to success, the kind of success that we're looking for, that's in alignment with your values and alignment with your beliefs, where you can feel successful in business and in life.
You and I are so aligned in our messages, and what the listeners don't know is we've already talked for an hour before we've started this, and we just had the best conversation. But I would love to ask you how you got started in business.
Yeah. So I have had so many different business lives, I feel like, but the main thing is I started Great Big Yes in 2010, and I started it so I could write, and I wanted to write about faith and motherhood. I had young kids at the time, and I wanted to talk about God. I wanted to talk about faith, and I really didn't have a plan. I just started blogging, and I blogged once a week, and it was like a hobby. It wasn't really a business. And then I went into become a yoga teacher. I became a Christian yoga teacher, and that really changed my life. That changed my relationship with God, and that changed what I wanted to do. I wanted to really get out there and share this message of hope and peace and balance and all of the things that I knew that young moms were looking for. And I was all of us, but I was a younger mom at that time. So I started that. And so Great Big Yes kind of turned into like, I was sharing yoga, and I was building these yoga classes. I went to teach my first yoga class, and I thought, well, maybe like 20 people will show up, and actually 80 people showed up. And so I knew that God had like invited me into this thing, and he was going to bring the people, and he did. And I did that in Chicago. Then we moved to Texas, and I did that here as well. And then I worked for Holy Yoga, and I worked in sales, and I helped them with sales and marketing. And I really loved it. I loved talking to people it was a unique situation because I was selling like yoga training, but I got to talk to Christian women all the time. And it really is more a movement or a ministry than it is like just teaching yoga. And so I got to really get into people's hearts and their passions and what they want to accomplish in life, what kind of legacy they want to leave, why they feel called to this. I got to help them and pray with them get over like fears, and say yes, say yes to this thing that they wanted to do. And so many of those women are still, I work with them in different ways, and they've all kind of launched their own like yoga businesses or wellness businesses. So that's been really exciting to watch people. But that really gave me the bug of encouraging people to follow their dreams and to say yes, even when they're afraid. And so Great Big Yes was all about saying yes to God when it started, and that's never changed. It's just had these different things that I've been doing throughout. So what I say is I get to say yes first. Like I'm going first and sharing my journey with you. So I have a membership now of women entrepreneurs. And in that, I get to help them with their marketing, finding their unique voice, plugging into their source and being confident and getting out there in the world with their message. But at the same time, I'm doing that too. So they're watching me as I'm doing that and learning from me. And we work together. Like the community aspect of it is really important too. Because I think there's a lot of people that are at home, working. And if it's just you and the computer for too long, you're going to be like, you're going to start to get distracted or bored, or maybe feel like you need some support and encouragement. And so it's nice to be around other women who are launching and growing a business, even if you're not doing the same kind of business, you can share some of the things that come up for you, because it's pretty universal. Some of the fears and doubts and blocks that come up for a lot of us are the same. So it started there. I actually had another business for a while. I was painting furniture. So I would go and like get other people's junk and paint furniture. And I would go to flea markets and I would go to garbage days and I would just find stuff and I would paint it and sell it. And one time it was so much junk in our garage. My husband was like, oh my gosh, I feel like we're like Sanford and Son. Remember? I don't know if you remember that show, but they had just like junk everywhere. And he's like, yes. He's like, we have to clean this out. Like this is, and so I realized like, it really wasn't conducive to, my husband and my little kids. At one point, I remember I was like, I really want to go over to my friends for a glass of wine. So can you put like the last coat of paint on this dresser? And my husband was like, okay, we're done. We're done. Like,
This is
you're
your
going
hobby.
to go have fun and I'm doing your job. So that was part of it too. And what I learned in that is I don't want to do things with like big furniture where I have to like get someone's truck to like deliver something. But also what it helped me do was build those relationships with clients where I got to talk to people about what they're actually looking for, what their vision for this piece is. Dealing with the customer service part, if someone wasn't happy or if they changed their mind or all of that. And so what I realized, and I love to talk to people about, is it may seem super random what you're doing right now. Like you may be on your third thing, this idea that you had, and you may be like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, why am I selling essential oils? Or why am I going to be a nutritionist, going back to school? Or why am I drawn to be in ministry, right? But whatever it is, God's going to use it. Nothing is going to be wasted. And it will make sense. Because now I'm like, oh, as I'm coaching entrepreneurs, I'm like, no wonder I had that and tried to start that up and did that thing, because all of those things help me to be an expert in this area that I'm helping people in now. But you have to kind of go through all of that to get to where you want to be. So I think sometimes I work with people who are like, oh, I wasted that time. And I'm always like, no. Nothing is a waste. Nothing is a waste. God will use it. Nothing is wasted.
Now, have you always held that belief, or did you mature into that? Are you feeling a bit disappointed that you haven't finished that project yet? Are the kids' schedules impacting your business? Or are the demands of your business affecting your relationships at home? Maybe you need a magic formula for that work-life balance before your fire gets so dim or it completely burns out. I've been there. There was a point in my life where I was juggling 2 businesses and homeschooling and had personal health issues. There was barely time to even connect with myself, much less connect with my husband. When I was finally officially diagnosed with ADHD, I felt like that explained everything. I had a new perspective and started approaching things in a new way. So I created a guide containing 20 tips that I personally use, and they have worked for me for helping me stay on course with my goals. Now, you might not have ADHD, but I bet you can relate to having a million distractions during the day. So if you're ready to stop procrastinating or stop being hard on yourself for missing yet another deadline, self-imposed or not, go ahead and download the guide at powercoachjen.com. If you just find one tip from the list that helps you move forward today, you will be so glad you took the time to read it. Go to powercoachjen.com and download the guide right now.
I think I matured into that because I probably wouldn't have known that before, but I never shied away from a new thing. I was gung-ho to start things. I'm not somebody who's like, oh, I can't do that. I think a lot of times entrepreneurs struggle with like, I don't know if I'm good enough. I don't struggle with that. I don't think I'm not good enough. I just would just jump in and do it. And then sometimes it wouldn't work out. but I was never like, oh, I should have never done that. Like, I don't have regrets. Like, I'm not somebody who's like, oh, I wish I would have never tried that. To me, you don't lose, you either learn or you win. Like, you succeed or you learned something. And so I'm not bothered by, like, I'm not embarrassed to be embarrassed, if that makes sense. Like, I think sometimes people are like, oh, I don't want to make a fool out of myself. I don't want things to look like, I guess I don't want to look stupid, but I don't care if I look silly. I don't know if that's a difference in other people's minds, but to me it is. Like, I'm kind of goofy and that's okay. But I don't want to look like I don't know what I'm doing. So I love it because I know you're analyzing me right now. You're trying to figure out what Enneagram number I am. You're skeptical. You don't think I'm a 3.
It's not that I don't think you are a 3. I just think there's the possibilities that we all, I was like, Tess told me I was several numbers before I realized through self-analyzing that which number I am. And so I just love hearing you light up and knowing the words that you're using. When you are lit up, you are totally in your flow of what you believe in. And hearing the words that you're using that may or may not be 3. It might not. We can continue talking about it if you want.
Yes, I want to know. I want to know what else you think I could be.
Well, here's the question. What are some of the things about the 3 that you resonate with? Or maybe I should ask you first, why do you believe that you're a 3?
So I'm looking at a thing right here. It says, the world values winners. I must succeed at all costs. I must avoid failure. I am what I do. To earn my place, I must be the best at what I do. I feel like I believe that the world values winners. I don't want to be a loser. I think though that may be like who I am maybe originally, but I do think there's been some pruning through the years, definitely of, from God. And some of that came, like, my oldest daughter had learning disabilities and struggled in school. And there was a tendency for me to save her, to make her look like she doesn't have any problems, to make sure that she didn't, like, to get every single helper who could ever come in our home to help her, to make sure that this was not a thing, because this was not okay, because the world values winners. So when I read that, I get this kind of like icky, like, ugh. But I also get, that's okay. God was like, at a certain point in that, was like, let me show you what you're doing here. And let me show you a different way. Let me show you a new way. And he started doing a new thing in me, which was to love and accept my daughter for who she is and not try to change her. But when I read that about the 3s, I go, oh, I get that. It's almost like I'm looking at this definition of a 3, saying that's in me, but I'm more in alignment with who God calls me to be now. This may be the raw me. Does that make sense?
It does.
So I can see in my life where that mentality of, like, the world values winners. Also, I'm very efficient. Like, any kind of job, I would succeed and then be moved up. Like, I'd be tapped as a leader ever since I was a child. Like, it could be like kindergarten, to, high school, all of it, jobs. So that, I think, is a 3-ish kind of thing. Efficient, results, and recognition and image is important to me. Again, God's really gone to work on that, to make me less self-focused and more other people focused. But I like things to look good. I always joke, I'm going to write a book from my mom about, and it's going to be called Honey, That's Unbecoming, because my mom would be like, she would say that, honey, that's unbecoming. Or, aren't you going to put your lipstick on before we leave the house? Right. So
Or earrings.
Yeah. So it's very much like, that's kind of how, like, you put your best, I'll still say things like this. You put your best foot forward. First impressions matter. Better to be overdressed than underdressed. Like, I'm trying to think of like things people would get, but like that image is important. I still believe it is. Like, I'm not thinking right now, oh, that's icky. I'm like, yeah. Threes strive for success in their chosen field and tend to be highly flexible and willing to adapt to achieve their goals. Yeah. At the best, others will experience threes as hardworking, principled, and receptive, offering gifts of hope and integrity with the world. I love that.
So what I want to do right now, if it's okay, I'm not sure what you're reading from, but these are all behaviors. And since the Enneagram is not based on behaviors, because wouldn't you agree that we're really good actors, that if we need to fill a role, then we can fill that role.
100%.
And so if our circumstances or the position that we're in, the role that we're playing as a mother or as a leader or as a business owner, or even as a child, the circumstances in our household, we can adapt our behaviors to make sure that we are coping.
Well, not only that, but I feel like, yes. And I would adapt this is something God's really brought to my attention and really tried to flesh out of me too, is I would be a chameleon to please people, to fit the thing. So I could work a room. Like, I would walk in a room and kind of know, like, how some people have that. Like, I see that in my daughter, and she's a 7, but I see that where you walk in the room and you kind of know, like, who the power holder is and what the situation is. Right.
Yeah.
And I would be able to talk to a CEO and, a worker. Like, it didn't matter like what their status was. I could kind of figure out how to make them like me. So I don't know if that's a 3 or whatever that is.
It could be a 3.
Like the motivation behind it would be, so that's a behavior. The motivation behind it, I think, and maybe I'm wrong, but would be people pleasing, like striving to be liked, to show up like successful. But I don't know.
So let me ask you this. When you say winner, how do you define winner? When you said you wanted to teach your daughter that she could be a winner, what does that look like?
It's kind of like that quote, like, I brought my kids into this world and I'm going to tell them how to live in it. Like, school demanded a certain, even though I know now, and I believe truly that they're trying to fit, square pegs in round holes. And the way that education in America isn't for every child. And we need to open up our eyes to that. Before I knew anything, and I just had, a first grader that didn't know how to read, I was like, oh, we need to fix this so you can fit this thing that leads to success.
What does success look like?
Well, at that time, I would say success would have been like academic success, because there was in my mind, and this is what I've totally outgrown and God has saved me from, is that in my mind, there was one path to success, and it was education, hard work, discipline, intelligence, faith. Like, there was this one path. Now I know, and that's what the gift of my daughter is, and the gift of her limitations has been, is that there is not one path to success. There's many paths to success. And the more we think there's one path to success, the more stuck we remain. But at that time, it would have been that linear, be good in school, go to college, get a good job, have a nice family, right? Like, and I've completely changed my mind on that.
So what is that success though? Like, the path to success would be, achieving, having hard work and being smart and education. What does that all lead to? What kind of success does that lead to?
I mean, it's so hard answering these questions now, because right now, success to me means something completely different. Success to me now means, understanding who we were created to be and living that out. Success now is about purpose. It's about passion. It's about coming alive. It's about leaving a legacy. It's about blessing the people that come in your path. It's about loving your kids in a way where they feel empowered to be fully themselves. It's like the opposite of what I used to think. And so for me, success is that personal peace and joy that can only come from being more you. It's back to what we're always talking about, but it's true. It's stopping trying to fit that mold, that there is not one path to success. So it's understanding that. It's like I can, I meet people now that are back kind of in that mindset of where I was before. And I'm like, wow, like, thank you, God, that I am not still thinking that there's only that one way to be successful, quotes. And I guess success at that time would have been, making a lot of money and having a nice home and having a family. And right now, when I think about that, that just feels like really small. Like God has so much more for me than that.
And back then, when you thought that success was money and having a nice home, back then, what did you think money and having a nice home was going to give you?
Happiness, peace of mind. Happiness is so shallow to me now. I don't even ever really use that word because I think happiness is circumstantial. What I'm after is joy that can't be affected by our circumstances, that comes from God and can never be taken away. And so that's what I think is so fascinating about talking to you about this, is because my journey is like completely, and I think a lot of us go on this journey. This is like the hero's journey, right? Like you figure out like who you are, but talking about what I think success is, I think there's there was me before and me now.
Yes. Yeah. Because we mature, right?
Yeah.
Mature, our character hopefully gets better. There's bad character too, but we work on our character. We work on our morality.
Yeah.
Yes. So tell me if I heard this correctly. So before, maybe when you weren't so proud of your definition of success was a single path that was, linear education, work hard, get a good job, be smart, be the best in your field so that you can make a lot of money, have a nice house, and be happy.
Yeah.
And now it's a little different words, but maybe the same. You're working hard through a different filter, right? Through your faith.
Yeah.
Understanding that you have a different kind of purpose that may not be linear, but a different kind of purpose that's a little bit more aligned to your core, and bringing your passion into that, bringing in community in that. So it's not about you anymore. It's about the legacy that you leave. And that gives you personal peace and joy, which can also be defined as happiness, but it's more mature happiness, right? It's a more mature happiness.
But in both cases, I am still really interested in accomplishment. Like I still want to accomplish things. Like I want to accomplish success in my business still.
Success, right?
It's to have impact.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I would look at anything I did as like, if you take it separately, like, okay, so if you're a mom and you stay at home and you're raising your kids, there would be a definition of success for that. And right now I would say my definition for success for that would be to have a positive impact on my kids, to show them what it looks like to be fully myself so they can be fully themselves. Mm-hmm. Now, my son now would get that because he's 19 and we're more evolved. But when he was a kid and I said to him, stop crying, man up, that wasn't my best moment. Because I feel like I've changed so much, but also I understand him so much more. It's this growth process, right? But at that time, telling my son to stop crying and man up is because I wanted him to fit in and behave. It was unbecoming to cry in that moment, right? In soccer or whatever it was. I don't remember. Mm-hmm. He could tell you the whole story. But now I'm like open and willing to listen to them and all of that. But I think in order to get to the place where we can have those relationships that are so impactful, we have to know ourselves, and God has to do the pruning of the things that are getting in the way of those authentic relationships.
Absolutely. You're right. One of the things that you said about being a chameleon, and social chameleon, threes are known as the social chameleon. It is a strategy. It's a coping strategy, more of a manipulation and less of but it's a manipulation for a heart and emotional need. Whereas for an 8, it's going to be more of a physical need, like more of a physical impact. Impact is a word, like I think I gave you the cheat sheet. Impact is a word that and before we started this, we were talking about how 3s, 7s, and 8s are very similar. They're all 3 are fast paced. The 3s are more emotionally tied to things, but not aware of it. So that's something that's really key to understand. Even though they're in that emotional triad, that emotional center, they're not aware of their emotional needs as much as the 7 and the 8. So the sevens are probably of the 3 the most emotional. So when the negative emotions come on, they just turn it off. They reframe it, make it something positive, and so they get a lot of this emotional buildup, so that when it does come to the surface, it's not pretty. Whereas the 3s and the 8s, they're going to handle them in private. Well, actually, I'll be honest. 3s and 7s and 8s will all handle their emotions in private because negative emotions are not comfortable.
Now, I feel like the 7, and maybe I have this wrong, but doesn't the 7 like kind of numb out or try to avoid the emotions, like try to avoid anything tough, so they kind of escape, or no?
They will escape negative emotions, but they don't escape life.
Yeah.
They will find.
No, they're like the life of the party, right? Like they're like.
Some of them are. Some of them are. So there's 3 different kinds of 7s. So there's the 7 that kind of looks like a 2. That's a little bit more sacrificial. Like they're happy if you're happy, and then there's the 7 that is the kind of the life of the party and kind of loud, and the life of the party because they're just fascinated. They're excited about new things. And when new things come, they're like, I want to do that. I want to try that. And so that's what they bring, that passion. And so that energy, they're energy makers. So 7s are energy makers. And then there's the other 7 that is, a little bit more 8-ish. They're still excited. They're still fascinated, but they are trying to find stability in strategy, in networking, because in general, so you read the one book that talked about the childhood theory. In general, the type 7, that lost childhood messages is someone's going to take care of me. So when the young 7 realize, and this is just a theory, it may not apply to all 7s, but when the young 7 realize that they're going to have to take care of themselves because there's not going to be somebody there to take care of them, especially when it comes to a negative emotion thing, they're getting attention when they're being positive and when they're being energetic, and so they keep reframing things to bring that energy back. And then that's why I relate to that. You relate to that?
I really relate to that. Like I try to wrap things up in a bow. Like if I start to go down a path where I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm really concerned about this. I'm really worried about this. Like, I feel like I would love like your prayers on this because I'm really concerned. And then somebody says something like, oh my gosh, like what's happening? I'm like, well, never mind. Like, it's going to be fine because I know everything's going to be fine. Right.
And just to make it a little bit more confusing, 3s and 8s can do that too. But these are all behaviors. The main reason is, so 7s are more fear-based and it's a more security. Like, I don't feel secure. Maybe I don't feel emotionally secure. Maybe I don't feel physically secure, but there's a safety issue here. So that young 7 who thought nobody's going to take care of me, there's a fear. So I'm going to have to take care of myself. So for the 3, it's more, I am not worthy. Like for me to be myself, nobody's going to like me if I'm myself. So I have to be somebody else in order for people to like me. And because they're not 100% aware of that, because 3s are on the anchor point, they're on that triangle that aren't aware of their core as well as much. They will tell themselves that they are thinkers and doers, but they're primarily feelers, but they're not aware of it. But everything is, so a lot of times when you see an unhealthy 3, they're emotionally reactive, but they won't own up to that because they don't see themselves as an emotional overreactor.
Got it.
Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah.
And then 8s just get angry. 8s are angry. They would get angry.
8s are angry?
Yes.
Yeah. I think my husband might be an 8 because I'm looking at that. It says that he a desire to be strong and a fear of being controlled. Like he's more like always in control, like he's like the leader. I don't know. He took the Enneagram test and I think he was either an 8 or a 1. And I feel like those are really different.
They're similar. All the numbers are similar. That's what people don't understand, because when we read these descriptions are the average behaviors, like the general behaviors. And when I say average behaviors, it's the behaviors that we have when we're not thinking about our personality, when we're not overcompensating for our unattractiveness.
Well, it's kind of like any test, or like when you go to a psychologist or something. Like I remember my daughter would have to go to a psychologist for her learning and her stuff, and she would know how to talk to the doctor to say what he wanted her to say, right? Like we learn these things. Like when we take a test, we start questioning like, but do they mean this? Because like we're performing for that test. So I get it. And I felt that as I was taking the Enneagram test, I know too, like where you're like, wait, so this is so fascinating. Well, the good news is we probably don't have to like be 100% sure of what we are, do we? I mean,
No.
Can it be fluid and we can explore?
Well, what's helpful, it's kind of like the shortcut. If you know what your type is, then there's a shortcut path, because then you know the levels of health. I call it a ladder of awareness. I've got my little Legos here. Podcasters can't see my Legos, but we have this little ladder, and we walk through life like this, not having that top half of our ladder. And then once we become aware, or the top third, I should say, once we become aware, these are our healthy traits. And when we're not thinking about our personality, we're right here. As soon as we become aware of our personality, we can make a healthy response, or we can have an unhealthy response. And that's where we end up being on our ladder. And the Enneagram it's like our litmus test to tell us, where am I? Am I on the right track? Because there's so much conscious/subconscious/unconscious stuff going on in our crazy brains that hold so much. 50 years of knowledge, right? 50 years of experience. If we could remember everything, our brains would melt. And so it's this exercise of really looking to see in each moment, okay, where am I on my ladder right now? Am I being average? Am I being healthy? Or am I being unhealthy? And usually we're being average, and that's okay, because they don't look attractive to us because we want to be better, but it's also the gift that God gave us.
Yes.
And that's where our superpower is rooted. And so I do have a podcast episode. It's 30, 31, 32. It's in the 30 area, where I have the 9 superpowers of each Enneagram and the 9 fatal flaws of each Enneagram, each Enneagram type. And both of them are rooted in those average behaviors. They're the things that we don't even recognize. We don't see them as strengths. Other people see them as strengths. Other people see them as flaws, but they're just average. And what's nice about that is we can say, well, I'm just being myself. Somebody else thinks this is wrong, but I'm just being myself. And then we can give ourselves that grace and not resist it, because so for a type 7, I'm a type 7, and some of the average behaviors is hyperactivity, indulgence. Woo! I'm crazy. Like I'm all over the place. I bounce off of walls and I eat all the cake, whenever I want. That doesn't seem attractive, right? But at the same time, if you look at the superpower, I can bring energy into the room. I can light up a crowd. I am a cheerleader. If somebody is upset, I can show them the positive silver lining in something. I can help the types that don't participate in self-care to learn to be indulgent, that it's okay every once in a while to have a piece of cake.
Yeah.
Now, when I start eating
permission.
Yes,
Yeah.
when I start eating 9 pieces of cake, I'm not in my average behaviors anymore. But to say, you know what, it's okay to eat cake right now. That's okay. And so that's my superpower, to be able to help other people. Hey, you can take care of yourself. It's okay for you to focus on yourself every once in a while. It's not okay for you to stay there.
Right.
But for another type, that could be pulling them up from the bottom of their ladder.
Yes.
And helping them pull up. Me just being myself, my average self.
Totally. I love that.
This has been a crazy conversation.
It's all over the map.
It really is. This is going to be fun to edit.
Oh, you're going to be busy. I think people will be interested. I think it's interesting that, like, what if you think you're a 3 and you're operating from this thing where you think you're a 3 and then you realize you're not a 3? Like, that's kind of interesting too. But I think the 7 feeling unsafe or not secure, that doesn't resonate with me at all. I've always felt safe, like totally safe childhood, great parents, like textbook kind of Americana childhood. Like I always trusted everyone. Like I never once felt like I'm not safe until I was older and, I got held up at gunpoint. And I went through so many things where, but I never, as a kid, that's not my childhood wound. I was safe. They were there on time. They were at every event, like the perfect kind of, you know what I mean?
That's why it's just a theory. I don't really resort to childhood theories. I think if people have had a traumatic childhood, they resonate with it. But if they didn't have a traumatic childhood, then they don't resonate with it.
Got it.
And that seed happens before we're born.
Yeah.
So,
it could have, the worthiness one of the 3s resonates with me more than the security one of the 7s. Like the worthiness, like, but again, once I started walking with the Lord and I understood my identity and my worthiness, I've changed my mind on that. But I think as a kid, that achieving made me feel like worthy.
Yeah. I'm going to tell you a little story. And it may help and it may not. So when you asked, what if I'm operating as a 3? I'm not really a 3. In the grand scheme of things, it's fine. Because as long as you are becoming more and more aware, then you're heading in the right direction. It may be, so I have a little visual of the Enneagram on the ground with a mountain coming up. And we're all trying to get to the same thing, to the top of that mountain. We just all have different beginning points. So I used to think that I was a 4. And I was trying to use my growth path as a 4 to become better. And what I realized was, so the growth path for a 4 is to start behaving like a 1. So it's like to get unstuck, I can start looking at 1 behaviors and get unstuck. The bad news is that I'm actually a type 7, and 1 is where I go in stress. So I could lie to myself. And if I was behaving like an unhealthy 1, when I thought I was a 4, I could say, oh, I'm doing good. Pat myself on the back, which is not, which was keeping me stuck because I was not aware. And it was because I wasn't aware. So the more aware we become, the more our true number is going to come out. And if you're already in the practice of becoming aware, it's, to me, in the grand scheme of things, it's more important to be present in the moment, whether you're the right core type or not. But if you want to use the Enneagram for its intended use, but it's a journey. Like, it took me a while to get to 7. And one day we all will get to the point. I mean, if we stick with it, we'll all get to the point where like, oh, this is absolutely who I am. And now I understand. It becomes, it almost makes the awareness like exponential, jump exponentially, because then you start looking at your past through a different lens. Like, oh, I did that because blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I didn't think I was a typical 7. None of the descriptions of a 7 sounded like me. I thought I was too responsible because I was the youngest, but there was a 7-year gap and a 5-year gap. So I feel like I was kind of an only child also, latchkey kid, so kind of on my own. Grades were very important. So I strove. Education was very important to me, so important to me that I did not major in what I really wanted to major in, but I majored in what I got good grades in. And so, so everybody just has a different path. And there was a time when I thought I was a 3. I never tested as a 3.
But I did look back and I had tested as a 3, probably like 10 years ago when I tested too. So it came up again, so, and it resonates with me, but yeah, that's interesting. I think
if I had taken it 10 years ago, I would have come up as a 3 because I was I was very driven because, well, I had kids. I left corporate. I was very driven in corporate. I was the one who wore business suits because I wanted people to respect me. I was a woman. I was a minority. I was young. I was in a federal corporate company where the average age was 38, but nobody was 38. So you were either in your 20s or you were almost out the door. And so, I mean, I wore the business suits, even though other people in my age were okay with wearing polos, they were okay with, but I wanted the respect. I wanted to be seen as successful. And that was where my personality journey began, because we had to create a personality test for the company. And I would have tested. I didn't know the Enneagram back then, but I bet you I would have, because that was important to me. Achieving, climbing the corporate ladder, not having a glass ceiling, because then I left corporate because there was the glass ceiling, went to work for myself, and it was for my kids. So special needs kids as well. And so I was doing this for them, and it was very important for me to be successful and to achieve. So I definitely can relate to the behaviors of a 3. And even back then, I probably could have related to the motivations of a 3. And it took a while for me to be okay with my core motivation of wanting to have fun and be happy. It took a while for me to be okay with that. And I'm like, but you know what? That's me. That's what I bring to the table. And that's what comes easy to me.
I think about during COVID, all the people that made me laugh, all the meme makers, thank God for them. I mean, they kept me going. Like, I needed to laugh. Like, I was so grateful for all the people that are like funny.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. We all have our place, right? Like our purpose. Like, we're all here. Like, God doesn't make mistakes. I mean, I think we can just like end it on that note. Like, regardless of what we are and number, this, that, letters, God doesn't make mistakes. He made us, and we're here for a reason, and we're equipped to make a difference. And I think that's, so many of my clients are motivated by having impact. And that's, once you know yourself and you know your gifting and stuff, you can, your motivations and your behaviors, you can have more of an impact, I think.
Absolutely. So something about 7s and funny. 7s don't think they're funny, and 7s don't think they're fun.
Interesting.
Because I've coached a lot of 7s. I track 7s apparently, but they don't think they're fun. I mean, even though they are, other people will say, "Oh my gosh, you're so fun," because they see the potential of how fun something could be. Because 7s are a frustrated idealist. Okay. So there's this idealism of like, tomorrow I'm going to have so much fun. And then tomorrow comes and it was still fun, but didn't quite reach the caliber of fun that my imagination had
Yeah.
for it. And so like, oh, it was not as fun as it could have been. And so sometimes the 7 can kind of like, they're really afraid of being the party pooper because they don't think it's okay to complain.
Uh-huh.
And so, yeah, it's not okay to complain, and they don't like.
That's I definitely relate to that. I don't think it's okay to complain. I still don't think it's okay.
3s will complain, like, and 8s will complain, and the things that it's what they complain about. So, in general, 7s don't like complaining on any kind of level. They don't want to hear about complaining about your life, about your job, about your dog. They don't want to hear about they might do it, but be smiling and laughing while they're doing it because they do need to express it. But they want to do it in a very lighthearted way so that it doesn't bring anybody else down.
Because I'm definitely like, I truly like a belief is that like, you can't complain about things that you allow. Like you can change your life. Like you have control over your own life. And so the choices that you make in life, when people create chaos in their own life and then they complain about it all the time, like that to me is the most frustrating. I can't sit for it. Like, I'm just like, oh my gosh, like you need to change it then, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know where that falls, but that's for sure. I mean, that's like a value of mine. Like you take ownership of your life, and complainers don't succeed. I mean, like, and I know what you're saying, you need to get it out sometimes, like venting, but like complainers or victims, like that's like, I can't stand to be around it.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, whoa, like that's like not anywhere. I don't know. I don't have respect for people that are victims all the time complaining, you know? No, I'm more like, I get all of that. But it's more like if somebody came to me with that, I'd be like, okay, I hear you. I'm listening. What are we going to do about it? Let's take action. Like, how can we change that? Right. Like I have a hard time sitting and this is a skill I'm learning too, where you are okay sitting in they're unhappy or they're having something going on. Instead of trying to fix it, you sit there with them in that space and maybe pray with them or just be with them or like be in silence with them. And I know how powerful that is. I do. But my inclination is to be like, okay, up and at them. What are we going to do to fix this? Right. Like, because I do believe that we have power over everything in our life, but I also get the trauma thing too. And I was a trauma sensitive yoga teacher and I've gone through tons of training. So again, I think that I've learned so much, but when I look at this stuff, it seems like I go in my mind back to like childhood, young adulthood. It's interesting.
And a lot of that. So the Enneagram is very telling in young adult. What was it that you said? Okay, so at the beginning, you said that you were teaching yoga classes, and you wanted to blog and write, but there really wasn't a plan. That's more 7. The 3 would have had the plan. Like there would have been.
I started my business with no plan. I even started coaching with no plan. Like I just went back to coaching, went to school, and then I was like, threw it out on Instagram, like, who wants to be coached?
Yeah. And so 7s are a little bit more kind of free spirited like that.
Fly by the seat of my pants.
Yes. 7s are more fly by the seat of the pants. 3s are more planner. I mean, they're both planners. 7s are planning to make sure they're having a good time and that it's enjoyable for them. 3s are planning to make sure that it's not going to fail. Like they won't start something if they think it's going to fail. So
okay, yeah, that's not me.
They're not as free spirited as like, let's go do this. So there was another thing that you said where you said you're not afraid of starting something new.
Oh, yeah.
You never shy away from a new thing, but 3s will if they don't think they can succeed at it. Like they'll make an excuse of, I'm busy that weekend. I can't, like, because they don't think that they'll do well at it. And so they'll either go and do it privately, like maybe let's say it's tennis. Let's go play tennis. They will go and take private tennis lessons until they are good enough to go to the people that they want to impress and play.
Oh, that's not me at all. I would actually say no, because I'm terrible at tennis. Let's go for coffee. Like I would just like,
because it wouldn't be
else.
fun. Because it wouldn't be fun. Like that, I'm terrible at it, and that doesn't sound fun. So let's do something else that is fun. That's more.
And I was never it's more of a 7. I was never somebody who like lied. Like, you know how some women would be like, well, I think I have plans that night. Cause I'd be like, that doesn't sound fun. Like I was always like so honest, like almost like where people would be like, wow, like you could have softened that. You know what I mean? Like I'd be like, what? We're not doing that.
Threes are more deceitful. In fact, that's their deadly sin. Like their deadly sin is deceit. And it's not always conscious.
Okay. I'm a 7. This has been so interesting. Yeah. Well, my daughter, she's a 7, and she's always like spending money and like
how old is she?
She's 21. She's always like at Starbucks, and she is the life of the party. And she's like, one day she was like at Starbucks. I'm like, Kelly, you don't have any money. Like, I don't know why you're at Starbucks. Like, you don't have any money. And she's like, Mom, I'm a 7. I'm like, okay, well, it's not to
don't need money.
It's not to use as an excuse.
Right. 7's too much. But yeah, like you said, no regrets. 7s don't have any regrets. Not embarrassed to be embarrassed. Like that is a constant state for a 3, is some level of embarrassment, some level, even if it's
I am not a 3. This is so interesting. Like I can look back now and say I was embarrassed, like when I was hanging on my boyfriend's like leg at the airport because I didn't want him to leave me. But like at the time, I was just like, don't leave me. Do you know what I mean? Like I wasn't thinking, oh gosh, if I do this thing, I'll be so embarrassed. Like I'm not
like, what do people think of me? Right. That's a constant thing that 3s are thinking of. What do people think of me? Because if you look at this, everything in this is in the green space, desire to appear.
Yeah.
So it's all about appearance. That's what it means by image. It's not just image, because we all have an image that we want to maintain. We all have a reputation. The difference is for a 2, 3, and 4, it doesn't have to be true. It just has to appear to be true.
Oh, that's not me. Like I care about my image, but like it has to be true. That's so interesting.
Even when you were younger, think about when you were younger, because you may have matured into that. So think about when you were younger.
Like when I was younger, I think I just was like, I just wanted everyone to like me. And yeah, maybe it didn't matter if it was, I don't think I thought that deep. I just had a lot of fun.
Yeah. Because you had a lot of fun. I
just kept having fun. And if it was fun, I was going to do it.
Use the F word. Fun.
Yes.
You've thrown down a lot of F bombs. Fun, freedom. Freedom is a big 7 word.
So fun. I mean, so fun. And I mean, so revealing. Yeah. I'm going to post on my Instagram story because I just posted that 3. Now I'm going to post, maybe I'm not a 3. ...
Stay tuned.
Jen just
typing.
Right. What do we call it? Retyped me?
Well, I didn't do the typing. You typed yourself because you were the one who said, oh my gosh, I'm a 7. I never actually came out and said you're a 7 because that's not my job.
But you would agree.
Well, based on the information that I have today.
I mean, that was really good because I really just talked and there were words that came out that you recognized are 7 words, which I wasn't I don't know those words are 7 words.
That's what I teach my coaches. Like,
so good.
Yeah. And what I'm not necessarily teaching them to be, so I've got 2 tiers, it's Enneagram coach or the professional coach. And that's more aligned with the ICF because what I teach them is you don't want them to be that one night stand. You want them to because we don't know if it's true. It's only true based off of the information that was revealed in that hour or 9 hours that we've just been talking.
Right.
But, it's only true for that. They need to come for a follow-up. They need to go reflect, go back into their life, reflect on whatever it is, insights they've had, and come back. And that's how coaches have sustainable business. If you know how, of course, our goal is for them to be able to do things on their own, but there's always going to be a time when they can't. And you got to build that rapport. You got to build that relationship and to really validate them that they understand it's okay. This is your journey. So anyway, so that's what I teach them. I teach them what words to look for And even with the follow-up. So last week we talked about the follow-up. I said, here are the words that I look for so that you know to do this follow-up process or this follow-up process. They're going to say this or they're going to say this.
Love it.
Yeah. This has been so great, Sue. Before you leave, can you let the listeners know where they can find you online?
Absolutely. I have loved our time together. This has been so much fun. You can find me at greatbigyes.com or on Instagram at greatbigyes. And then I have a podcast as well. It's on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and SoundCloud, and it's Great Big Yes. So it's pretty easy. But if you go to greatbigyes.com, everything's there.
That sounds great. Thank you so much for saying the great big yes of being a guest on my podcast. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you for having me.
Right, bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening, subscribing, and reviewing the Unbox Your Personality podcast. To learn more about yourself, go to powercoachjen.com. Find out how you are different so you can make your difference.